3 seasons, 3 promotions achieved in different ways, and finally, União de Tomar had returned to the first tier of Portuguese football after a 51-year absence. Having been the manager who achieved such a task, I ended up being flooded with quite a few job offers from various teams across Europe who wanted to interview me, but much like the Crystal Palace offer, I chose to decline them. I knew this task was not going to be an easy one, so I ended up going to a very specific place for advice, searching for and finding a man who had been the reason for FC Porto's success in recent years before his departure from it all.
Flashback.
Hey, so I just wanted to know, how do I succeed at this level and not turn into a complete fraud like you did?
Shut up, numpty. Get out of my house!
End of flashback.
That went about as well as expected. Even without the advice of that fraud, things were looking up. A new stadium is under construction, we're getting some good money for taking part in Liga Portugal, but it turns out that constructing a new stadium is expensive, and we're in the red to start the season.
We're rich. No.
We're not rich!
We're rich.
We're broke!
So with what little transfer money we do have, we end up picking up winger Vando Felix at the end of his contract with Sporting CP, purchase winger Rodrigo Matos from Mafra, and then use the bits we have left on center back Gabriel Vareta from Palmeiras, both for his skill and as an excuse to give my beloved Alviverde more of my money. Those signings are enough to get us through our friendlies along with the first 2 phases of the Allianz Cup, where we thoroughly dismantled Tondela in the first phase with a 4-1 win and handled Caldas just fine with a 2-0 clean sheet. But those were second tier teams and we were now in the first tier. This was to be expected, just as it was expected to end up being sorted on a third phase group with Moreirense and Braga. Those matchups do prepare us for the opening game of Liga Portugal, as União de Tomar is set to make a triumphant return to the Portuguese main stage against Estoril Praia. It is a game in which we score 2 goals in the first 10 minutes of the matchup and where everything looks to be going well.
That's a red card!
Estoril Praia promptly proceeds to use this to their advantage to score 3 unanswered goals. 2 of our starters end up injured at the tail end of this game, and we eventually lose 4-3 in our Liga Portugal debut. Not an ideal start, but it's only 1 game, and there were positive signs. But there were also negative signs, as a matchup against Sporting CP sees us lose by conceding a 90th minute winner. We have to then rescue a draw against CF Estrela Amadora, and while we do get our first win in Liga Portugal this season against Portimonense, that momentum gets promptly shut down by Moreirense with a 2-1 loss to them at their house. I may or may not have ended up panic buying fullback Apostolos Apostolopoulos just before that Moreirense loss due to factors, and then shipped off Ibrahim Sesse on loan due to the amount of absolute stinkers he's had in the past month.
What? What is this? For what? Why?
But we make some more purchases for reinforcements, although they won't be arriving until January due to end contract stuff in their respective leagues, so we'll talk about them in due time. If August was our rude welcome to Liga Portugal, September was only going to add on to that, as we had Benfica to start the month against at Estádio da Luz. Our past encounters against them have been anything but fun, and it was most likely that we would yet again suffer the agony of defeat. Wait, we beat him 2-1? What the hell? Oh, you're saying it cost us Guilherme Mantuan for 4 months due to a hip injury? And that while we get a narrow win against Sporting Clube Farense, we are also losing Aristide 1 for a month and a half, and following that up by getting trounced by Aruca, and then letting in another late game goal to lose to Moreirense for the second time, although that one is in the Allianz Cup. Cool. Yeah, fantastic.
We're not done yet.
It's around this time in which we get our Taça de Portugal third round match against 4th tier team Real Sport Clube for October, and the month itself is a mixed bag. while we keep Braga to a 0-0 draw and manage to barely beat another team that's a relegation candidate in CS Marítimo, it does take another Archie Goodwin masterclass to barely get past Real Sport Clube in the Taça de Portugal match. The cost of such a win is losing Brian Ferreira to a damage near cartilage for 2 months and Abubakar Abdullahi to sprain knee ligaments in the exact same training session after that game. Look, I know the rule here is that sacrifices must be made, but even this is starting to borderline on ludicrous. Porto uses the tail end of October to remind us of our place in the pecking order as we lose 5-3 to them, and then Braga shows us that the 0-0 draw earlier in the month was nothing more than a fluke, as we lose 3-1 in the Allianz Cup game and are knocked out of the competition entirely.
Game over, yeah!
November comes along. Casa Pia are said to be our opponents in the 4th round of the Taça de Portugal, but against Boa Vista in Liga Portugal, a brace from Archie Goodwin isn't enough as we lose 3-2 thanks to a late game winner from Alexandre Ferreira. Following that loss with a draw against Vitória de Guimarães didn't inspire a lot of momentum going into the Taça de Portugal's 4th round match. Good thing that Australians are built different because Archie Goodwin comes through clutch and scores the game winner to help União de Tomar advance in the 5th round of the Cup. But while they've had some success in the Cup, the top tier of Portuguese football strikes again as they lose 3-2 to Nacional da Madeira to wrap up November. They're only about 8 points separating 7th through 15th place, and União de Tomar is kinda smack dab in the middle of it. But their form hadn't exactly been inspiring. Their only match in December against Rio Ave ended up being a draw, but before that match even happened, I decided to do the one thing we could do to keep our players sharp throughout the month. We scheduled a bunch of friendlies against lower league teams on the cheap, and helped raise our self-esteem in the process. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but take a good look at January's schedule. It's going to be our busiest to date, and I'm not going to have our players go into it without any sharpness whatsoever. Speaking of January, remember those reinforcements I was talking about? Well, they have finally arrived. Former Urawa Red Diamond center back Irfan Fondi immediately found his way into the starting lineup upon arrival and helped us break a 5-game winless streak against Casa Pia in Liga Portugal. It's a key victory that sets the tone for the rest of the month throughout the Liga Portugal games, as we stayed unbeaten for most of the month with victories and draws alike. It's very clear at this point that they have our number and they have it in spades. Additionally, we did sign former NAC Breda winger Adam Cade, but he spent the entirety of January helping Palestine get to the semifinals of the AFC Asian Cup. That said, the 5th round of the Taça de Portugal was up next, and it started off incredibly, as we went ahead to a 2-0 commanding lead. But to their credit, Lenk FC Vilaverdense came back to tie it up in the second half to take the game into extra time. Chances came aplenty for both teams throughout the extra 30 minutes of football, but just when it looks like we're headed in the penalty kicks, it's none other than Vando Felix who manages an absolute banger of a shot to turn it around and make it a 3-2 win.
There! It's over! It's done! We're safe! Oh, son of a bitch!
So, not only do we get Benfica in the 6th round of the Taça de Portugal, we get to face them twice in a 3-day span to start the month of February.
Flashback to the future!
And yeah, it didn't go all that well. Is this a good time to mention that Benfica got Romelu Lukaku at some point during this past transfer window? In general, this season has been a wake-up call that we're going to need to make some improvements on just about every aspect of our team. But for now, we move on to the rest of the Liga Portugal games, as we do bounce back from the Benfica losses with a sound 3-0 win over Farense, then avenge our loss to Aroca earlier in the season with a 3-1 win to wrap up February. Sporting CP promptly reminds me of the packing order to start March by beating us 3-0 and making it look easy. A week later, a reckless play from a Braga defender gets him sent off, and we're able to capitalize on it with a 2-0 win, although losing to an already on its way to relegation CS Marítimo immediately after that isn't quite the best look. We do manage to beat Boa Vista 2-1 to start April, and that leaves us with 6 games left in the year, and right now, fluctuating between 8th and 10th place. Also, Archie Goodwin is only 6 goals behind Romelu Lukaku for top goal scorer in the league. Not too shabby. In our next game against Vitória de Guimarães, thanks to Aristide 1's brace, including a late game winner, we sealed the deal and have officially avoided relegation. So it's par for the course that Nacional de Madeira once again smacks us around and we lose 4-2, followed by Porto winning the title outright in their 2-1 win against us the following game. But also, they now have Eric Dyer on their roster. So who's the real loser here?
I'm a loser. Yep, still a loser.
The losing skid continues with a loss to Famalicão, but in the final 2 games of the season in May, we do manage to collect whatever's left of our pride for the year and beat Rio Ave in the last game they're playing at their current stadium before they move to a new ground, and then beat Casa Pia to wrap up the year in 10th place. Overall, this was a tough year. We have some wins that we can hang our hats on, but ultimately, a mid-table finish was the best case scenario for this current roster, and by our board's expectations, we've yet again overachieved. Sure, we did it by basically tackling the ever-living bejesus out of everything that moved on the pitch, but the adage is simple. Sacrifices must be made. Survival at this level and seeing another season in Liga Portugal will be essential moving forward, as we've seen our revenue increase dramatically overall compared to last year, and with a brand new stadium that will be ready to go starting next season, things are looking up for us. Well, at least the delay is only until October.